The 1970 restored version of the classic documentary, The Beatles, Let It Be, has premiered on Disney+. The makers of the documentary, The Beatles, Let It Be explain how one of the most important scenes, and a watershed moment in music history, was almost cancelled. This documentary, directed by Michael Lindsay-Hogg, was first released in theaters 54 years ago and is difficult to obtain, mainly because the original master tape was stolen from Apple Corps shortly after the film was made. But the real problem was that the master sounds, which were 450 to 500 15-minute master sound reels from 20 days of shooting, had been stolen from Apple Corps in the early 70s. Clyde then explained how Peter Jackson's Get Back documentary was the spark that cleared Let It Be for re-release. According to Clyde, when the Beatles made the White Album, 1968, they all recorded in separate studios, and the sessions seen on Let It Be at London's Twickenham film studios were the band trying to reconnect with each other. In the background, there were problems at the factory, a decline was occurring, and it was driving a wedge between Paul McCartney, John Lennon, and George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, Clyde said. It was then in April 1970 that it was officially announced that they had disbanded. And then the film and album that Phil Spector has now reproduced emerged as a kind of strange script for the end of their career. So they didn't really like Let It Be because it was associated with all the problems within the band. The producer also revealed that the Beatles' iconic Rooftop show at Apple Corps on Savile Row almost never started. They set it up the day before the show, all the crew was ready, all the equipment was there, and the band said, "Yeah, not today," and Michael Lindsay-Hogg was pulling his hair out because he as the director had it ready. "To find the climax in this period of filming," said Clyde, "he feels a sense of responsibility." Guardian columnist John Harris, who previously compiled 120 hours of audio recordings made during the sessions in January 1969 into the book The Beatles, Get Back, added, "It's a kind of happy ending in the sense that they took it to the roof. It was touch and go. The story is that the four of them had arrived the night before. George had said he didn't want to do it, and there was general skepticism. They got to the exit on the roof, and they stood there, and John said, 'Fuck it,' and out they came. It's really beautiful in a quite spectacular way. It's not about the pyrotechnics. It's about how great the musicians were. It's also about London at that time." When asked about the band's split, Clyde concluded, "At some point, they're going to break up. They were the first big band to break up, and it was surprising at the time. Now, it's not that surprising, because big bands always break up. It's normal. They grew beyond the Beatles in a strange way, and it affected their relationship for a few years, but then everything came back. There was a big argument between John Lennon and George Harrison, which was not immortalized in the film, and of course George also denied it. Harrison was annoyed by Lennon's indifferent attitude towards the Beatles. Reportedly, this tension escalated into punches, although on January 16, 1969, Harrison said that, "There was no punching, we were just fighting." After Harrison decided to leave the recording session, the other Beatles tried to continue the practice session. John Lennon had offered Eric Clapton to replace George Harrison, which was then immediately rejected by Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. A week later, George Harrison returned to the studio and offered conditions if he wanted to continue recording Let It Be.